Hello, I'm TJ Maher. Although I've been a senior QA engineer here in Boston for the past 20 years, I've only been an automation developer since 2015, back when I started writing automation frameworks for Fitbit's shopping cart. Back then, the interview process, although difficult, it seemed easier. During the interview, there wasn't any actual coding. I was able to talk about experimental automation frameworks that I had written as part of an online class, and I was able to point to the code in my online code repository on github.com. After Fitbit, though, when searching for positions, I realized that the screening process had changed a bit. I was introduced to the dreaded whiteboard coding interview. Let me tell you, between you and me, it's very, very stressful. Let's simulate that stress for you in a coding interview, shall we? Take out some paper and a pencil. Open up your favorite browser and Google the keyword stopwatch. When the stopwatch Google app pops up, press the start button. Now, please answer the following coding challenge. It's the coding challenge. FizzBuzz. Write a program that prints the numbers between 1 and 100. For multiples of 3, print Fizz. For multiples of 5, print Buzz. For the numbers which are multiples of both 3 and 5, FizzBuzz. You can do it. Keep going. Don't stop. Even if you don't know the answer, try solving it for a good 60 seconds more. Having trouble? Write down a for loop that prints all numbers from 1 to 100 and then stop. Are you making headway? Good. Try solving this problem for a good 20 minutes more. Pause this video if you need more time, but keep the timer running. Don't worry, I'll wait. Need more time? Pause the video again. Okay, time's up. How well did you do? If you had trouble answering this question, if your paper was blank, if your mind was blank, if you were asking yourself, why the heck is TJ asking me to answer this question? I'm not a coder, I'm an automation developer, then this video is for you. Okay, now how well did you do? If you were able to solve this problem in, say, under 20 minutes, this talk might be a bit low level for you with the coding. If you weren't able to finish this problem under 20 minutes, what happened? Was it the timer? Was it your heart in your throat because of all the pressure? Practicing how to do coding tests a bit each day before you start to do interviews, that will help. Now, was it that you kind of knew the gist of how to solve the problem? Hitting the books on the language, that will help that problem. Or were you completely flummoxed by the question and didn't know how to begin? Don't worry, that happened to me too last year and last season and last month. Yeah, coding tests, they never seem to get easier. But with this video, I'll walk you through every step of the way of how and where to do research, how to interact with the developers who are giving you the coding test, and how to solve the problem. And also, we'll cover how to study. First, let me tell you the story of my first encounter with the coding test in the wild. I have to warn you though, it ain't pretty. When I found myself in my first job interview in 2 years, everything seemed to be going well, right up until I was asked to approach the whiteboard. Using your favorite programming language, write a method that checks to see if a given word is a palindrome. What? I thought I'd be reviewing automated test code I had already written, not coding in real time. There's nothing about using Firefox, Firebug, and Firepath to find the elements on a page. Or how about writing something in IntelliJ, spinning up a browser, going to a login page, entering a username and a password into a text box, and clicking on a login button. Oh dear. I was not ready for this, not even close. I might have been able to figure it out had it been a take-home test. But when it was just me, the whiteboard, a dry erase marker, and 2 stone-faced developers observing and judging me, my mind was turning into complete and utter blank. After getting through only half the assigned problem, I joked with the interviewers. If only I had a laptop in front of me loaded with IntelliJ. If only I was coding an automated test, I'd be doing a lot better. Their response: all employees are expected to meet a certain minimum standard of coding knowledge, even for quality assurance positions. And that, my friends, is how I started my new job search. When I was interviewing back in 2014, a year before I joined Fitbit, only once did I come across a coding interview. After Fitbit, 2 years later, 8 out of 9 positions which I interviewed for, including one. The coding interview, it strikes fear in the heart of the most senior software developers, and much has been written about how to prepare for them and pass them. Why are automation developers being screened as candidates in the same way as developers? The answer was a strange concept for me to grasp. Because automation developers are now software developers. The automation role has moved over in the past few years from testers who can code to coders who can test, leaving us manual testers in the lurch. The new philosophy is that the code for automation should match the same quality standards as production code. If they don't stick to the best practices of object-oriented programming, companies might end up with a testing framework that is hard to read, hard to understand, and hard to maintain. Techniques such as encapsulation, inheritance, abstraction, polymorphism will be harder to teach if automation developers don't have a basic fluency in a programming language. With software developers now a major part of the interview process, they are screening automation developers candidates to make sure they have at least a basic understanding of the fundamentals of the language in which they will be coding. And whiteboard coding tests are the best solution they can come up with. The software developers, they don't consider the questions they are asking automation developers to do to be too difficult. They're not asking candidates to solve the Tower of Hanoi, John Conway's The Game of Life, or Tic-Tac-Toe Simulation, or Shuffle the Deck of Cards, or any of the other programs that they did as a computer science major. Most of the coding examples they're asking are what they consider to be basic programming questions, dealing with loops, some basic math, and some string and character manipulation. So, why was I finding it so difficult? Number 1. Whiteboard questions. The topics might be outside your wheelhouse. Although I work with the Java language, it's rare when I actually have to use a data structure more intense than a hash map, and even that is rare. The code I write, it revolves around Selenium WebDriver. I open up a browser, I go to a page, I enter data into a text box, I select a radio button, and I pull text from a screen. I do string comparisons all the time, checking if the alert text in the screen is the same as what's expected. But I only use some of the string object helper methods in my day-to-day job. Number 2, whiteboards don't have IntelliSense. If I need to use any of the helper methods in the string, character, or integer object, All I need to do is type a period after the word, and methods are on display. I can just experiment with them to see what they do. You can't do that with a whiteboard. Number 3. Whiteboard tests don't allow you to use outside sources. If I'm stuck when writing a test, I review Alan Richardson's course Selenium WebDriver with Java, or Dave Hafner's Elemental Selenium for inspiration. Or if I want some automation awesomeness, I just listen to Joe Colantonio's Test Talks podcast. And if I'm really stuck, there's always stackoverflow.com. Number 4. Whiteboard interviews feel isolating. When I'm starting to write a test regarding a functionality I'm not familiar with, I love bouncing ideas off my teammates, just to make sure that I'm not barking up the wrong tree. But during a job interview, I can't bounce ideas off the interviewers. Or can I? I mistakenly assumed that I couldn't. After that first whiteboard test, I came to a hard realization. After relying on all the tools and techniques I mentioned above, I didn't have the basic Java fluency that I thought I did. It was as if I were interviewing for a job that required fluency in the Spanish language, and I made the claim that I knew the language because I studied it in high school and college, which is true. If I was asked to write a few grammatically correct paragraphs on a whiteboard about a random topic such as that morning's breakfast, would I be able to do it without an English to Spanish dictionary or a phrase book? Imagine coding as a foreign language. As long as I limited the Java conversation to Selenium WebDriver, I'd be able to hold my own. Take away IntelliJ and Stack Overflow, my own personal English to Java dictionary, and phrasebook, and if you put me on the spot, I couldn't easily write the paragraphs of code my interviewers were looking for. The software developers think that they're setting the bar low. They want automation developers who are fluent in the basic features of a programming language. Unfortunately, all my on-the-job training had not prepared me to answer any of the questions they were asking. How the heck would I ever be prepared? This is how to prepare yourself for whiteboard exercises. To prepare for coding interviews, I've built up my fluency in Java using some of these tips. You can take similar steps for any programming language. The first step is take a refresher course. Check to see if your local library or your college alma mater offers a subscription to free online programming classes. Members of the Boston Public Library can get a free subscription to lynda.com, the online education company. The Thomas Crane Public Library in Quincy, Massachusetts has free subscriptions too. Completely new to the Java language? Has it been a while since college? Take a look at Oracle's Java tutorials. The Java tutorials are practical guides for programmers who want to use the Java programming language to create applications. They include hundreds of complete working examples and dozens of lessons. Groups of related lessons are organized into learning trails. We're searching Java tutorials. And here you can see the Java tutorials at the Oracle Help Center. Here you have on the official Java documentation the Java tutorials. They've been updated for JDK, the Java Development Kit 8. Here you have trails covering the basics, getting started, learning the Java language, essential Java classes, collections, daytime APIs, development, and preparation for Java programming language certification. The only thing you really need to know is probably just getting started and learning the Java language and essential Java classes. To be truly fluent in a foreign language, you must build up your vocabulary. Likewise, to become fluent in a programming language, you need to study the vocabulary listed in the Java API documentation, if that's your favorite language. Let's search for Java API. Here we see the Java API specifications. Click on that. Yeah, Java Standard Edition 9 isn't too popular at the moment. Let's stick with 8. Here we can search for, here, we click on string, we're going to see all about the class of string. That's different fields, bytes, the different types of method that the string helper has. For example, char@. It returns the index of where the character is in the string. For example, if the char@ is 0, that's at the head. If the char@ is -1, that's at the tail. You get to concatenate strings. Here's what you need. You need to learn regular expressions like split. See if it starts with a prefix. Make sure to figure out how to turn something to lowercase, or if you can convert that string to a character array. Trim unnecessary white space. When doing your whiteboard exercises, always make sure to debug and test your code. Take your initial test cases and imagine what would happen if you ran them on IntelliJ. Personally, I like rewriting tests in a JUnit format using assert statements, but this is not required. Interviewers are checking to see how thorough you are when debugging. Can candidates spot errors in their own code without the interviewer giving many hints? And yes, interviewer will give hints if the candidate has done well up until now. If we give the candidate hints, will they pick up on them? Can they listen to others? Will a candidate accept constructive criticism? When I'm preparing for a coding interview, I usually write my rough draft using an IDE. That is an integrated development environment, such as IntelliJ IDEA, so I can play around with the language. Once I'm done tinkering and found a good solution, I try to see if I can write it down on paper. To download the tool, go to jetbrains.com/idea to download the free community edition if you wish. You actually could use any IDE that you wish: Sublime Text, Eclipse, Vim, Emacs. I use IntelliJ not because it's the best tool, it's simply the one that I've used in my past 3 jobs. Once that is downloaded and installed, we can start setting up a Java project. Okay, we're going to start with IntelliJ IDEA, create a new project, start a Java project, Java 1.8, hit next again. We're going to call the project name Whiteboard Test. Hit finish. Here under source, we can create a new Java class called Whiteboard Test. Hit OK. Our first assignment, we are going to write a method, adder, that adds 2 methods together. Okay, let's go to View, enter presentation mode, so we can see. Now that we have this whiteboard test, let's use the JUnit annotation for test. public void test adder let's do an assert. Assert equals that if we have an adder function and we pass two numbers such as 1 and 1, we will get 2. Let's try again. Let's copy this. Let's come up with maybe a total of 3 test cases that are positive. And let's say 3 test cases that are negative. Okay, we're adding 1 and 1 is 2. Let's see, 10 and 10 is 20. And negative 1 plus negative 1 is negative 2. Not equals. Let's do a famous one. 2 and 2 is not equal to 5. Let's do 100. 100 is not equal to 299. And let's say negative 1 and negative 1 is not equal to 3. Now let's create a new adder method. Public int adder. Let's pass in integer, and for now let's call it an x and int y. Now we're going to cheat, and we're going to return x plus y. If we right-click on the test, run the test adder, the test kicks off, it runs, and we see that everything is green. That's good. Our next assignment, we're going to write a method that checks to see if an integer is even or odd. Always, always, always write test cases first. Here we have 3 positive test cases. Here we have 3 negative test cases. We are checking that 1 equals the output of odd, 2 equals the output of even, and 55 equals odd. We're also checking that 1 is not equal to even, that 2 is not equal to odd, and 55 is not equal to even. Here, the method check even or odd is there. It's taking in the integer. Are you familiar with the modus operator? The modus operator. This is basically finding a remainder. If it's taking whatever x is and dividing it by 2. If there is no remainder, like if it's 0, then we know it's an even number and it's returning the string. It's returning the string even. Else, it's going to return the string odd. If we run the test, we see that everything is green. And now for the dreaded FizzBuzz. In this first attempt, I recreated the logic problem that I accidentally inserted when I first tackled this exercise. Let's see if you can spot it. Okay, here's the infamous FizzBuzz test. Here, we're feeding into the method FizzBuzz a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 15. Because 3 is divisible by 3, it's going to say Fizz. Because it's 5, it's going to return Buzz. 15, it should say the word FizzBuzz. And if it's not divisible by 3, not divisible by 5, or it's not divisible by both, it should just repeat the number that you fed into it, like as a string. 1, 2, or 4. Okay, here's our first attempt of writing the FizzBuzz module. Here you can see that it's a private method that's going to return a string, but you're feeding in this test data as an integer. This is so we can return it as a string. Here, this first if statement, x mod 3. This checks if this x is divisible by 3, meaning output's 0, it's supposed to say Fizz. If it's divisible by 5, it's going to print it out and return Buzz. Else, if it's divisible by 3 and by 5, it's going to print out FizzBuzz. Okay, let's run this test, see what happens. Oh, and it errored out. Somehow, with 15, it errored. Why is that? With Fizz it worked, with Buzz it worked, but in 15, it just returned Fizz. Let's walk through that. Let's say FizzBuzz. If you feed in a 1, is 1 divisible by 3? No. Let's go to the next loop. Is it divisible by 5? No. Is it divisible by 3 or 5? No. So therefore, it returns as a string, which is why that works. If it's divisible by 3, 3 goes into FizzBuzz. Is 3 divisible by 3? Yes. So then it prints the word Fizz and returns the Fizz. Now, let's say 5. 5 is fed into the integer. You see if it's 5 divisible by 5? Yes. It's going to output that and return Buzz. Okay, what happens with 15? 15 is get fed into here. Is 15 divisible by 3? Yes. It's going to print out the word Fizz and return the value Fizz. Ah, I see that problem. Let's then, to fix it, let's move this language here and change that. Else, if we return this. Okay, let's see if this works. For our second attempt at FizzBuzz, we're going to fix the errors we made and see if there are any edge cases we left out. Okay, we're going back to FizzBuzz. I'm going to run the test. And everything passes. We see 3, 5, and 15 with the corresponding Fizz, Buzz, and FizzBuzz. Good. There's one test case we missed. Let's copy that statement, paste it. What happens if it's a 0? With 0, it errored out. Okay, let's make this even longer. If x equals 0, return 0. Wait a second. Isn't one of the requirements to print out the integer if it's not FizzBuzz or FizzBuzz? And while we're adding this requirement, I went ahead and I prettied up the code. Here we have the method FizzBuzz. It's still going to return a string. It's still going to accept an integer, x. But we have a new parameter, string value. Okay, let's see how this is used. If x is 0, the value is going to be 0. If x is divisible by 3 and x is divisible by 5, the values are going to be FizzBuzz. Else, if x is divisible by 3 only, Fizz. If x is divisible by 5, Buzz. And last but not least, if it doesn't meet any of these conditions, x is going to be converted to a string and placed in the word value. Okay, let's run this. Right-click, run FizzBuzz. Oh, good. If it's 0, it returns 0. 1, it returns a 1. 2, it returns a 2. 3 is Fizz. 5 is Buzz. 15 is FizzBuzz. Everything passed. Gaining basic fluency in a programming language and being able to demonstrate it will not happen overnight, but it can happen. Here's how to proceed. Find a basic coding problem on the web. Attempt to solve them with a pen and paper. If you can't solve them, look at the official documentation of the programming language and see which built-in language methods will help you out. Come up with your own solution first, before seeking out a better solution. If you do your own research and investigation, chances are the information will stick in your mind permanently. Don't do cram sessions. That merely stores the information in your short-term memory. You need to practice a little bit at a time, maybe 15 minutes a day. You want this information to move to long-term memory, so you can recall information even during extreme interview stress. Don't go through all this effort just to pass a whiteboard test. You must aim higher. Make your goal to be a better programmer. Finally, there's so many sites out there where you can practice taking coding tests. Some of my favorite is LeetCode. You can go for the easy and free questions. There's also top 10 algorithms for coding interviews, where you can feel free to share your favorite coding questions with the general public. Good luck and happy coding.